Okay, well, hello, Internet. We are going to be playing a game for Gauntlet Con 2019. This game is called The Outsiders, and it is roughly a descended from the Queen game, so it's got some similarities you'll see to For the Queen as far as some of the mechanics and stuff, but you'll also see there's a bit of difference. We can talk more about that later. The game itself is one that you learn by just reading the cards, very similar again to For the Queen. So we'll get into that in a minute. The safety tools are kind of included in the game as well. One of the things that it doesn't mention, of course, is things like the open door policy. So I just want to make sure everyone knows that that's in effect as well. So the open door policy says that if at any time you need to go for any reason, this could be physically you got to go for a reason, or you're just not into the game, or you have an emergency family phone call, or whatever it is. It doesn't matter what it is. Just let us know that you got to go, and we will not give you any guilt trips or anything. The game will survive, and you are more important than the game. So that is our open door policy. But other than that, I think everything else will be explained as we go through and play. There are a couple of things that we're going to do slightly different because we're playing online instead of at a table. So for example, the turn order, as we're talking, like instead of going clockwise, we have this situation here. So what I'm going to do is in the chat occasionally, I'm going to do this where you can see that it has like our names in an order, and that will be the turn order. So we'll go, that's our clockwise, right? Let me see here also. Yeah, and then because we're using Zoom, one of the things we'll do is we'll probably change, at a certain point we will create character names, and when we do, we can kind of change our screen name to have both our character name and maybe our player name and pronoun and all that stuff. Any other time where we have to make adjustments to play online, I'll mention it then, so we don't have to talk about it up front. Before we start, I'm going to share a screen. So you should see, oh, of course, that screwed up all my Zoom windows because Zoom is awesome, except when it's annoying. There we go. And let me just rearrange this again. Okay, cool. So you should see a shared screen there with a little message from our lovely game designer, who's also my partner, Jay, and cool. And then let me make sure I have all the rest of my stuff in order. All right, ready to go. So let me see, is there anything else I need to do prior to starting? I think that's it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna read this first card, but then Leandro, I'm gonna have you start reading after that, and we'll do our turn order. And I'll because I'm in control here of the shared slides, I'll just click the button as we go from card to card. So welcome friends and strangers alike to The Outsiders. May you enjoy this time together, Jay.
To start gameplay, go around the table clockwise and take turns reading the instruction cards aloud.
What this is, The Outsiders is a collaborative story game. As players, you will take on a dual role. You will play members of an outsider group who seek to be part of a larger, more established community.
Additionally, you will inhabit the role of the council, who must vote to either accept or reject the outsiders. As the council, you will not develop specific personalities. Instead, you will merely express the thoughts and opinions of the community at large.
Answer the following questions together.
I'll let you do the first one, Tony.
All right. What group are we trying to join? Wow, there's a lot of if I pick something someone doesn't want to play, please tell me, because I don't want.
Well, these are all doing it together, so we can. Okay. This can be a group discussion. But why don't you read us some of our choices here, and then we can discuss.
What group are we trying to join? A superhero team, a walled city, a sorority or fraternity, the Assassin Fighting Club, a school for elite animal companions, a cult or secret society, a guild, a mech force, a magical school, or blank. So anything we want.
Yeah. And I will make a request not to join a magic school, only because I've played that a couple times. But we have played games like where, you know, we were a pack of wolves who got, like our pack got shrunk due to a fire and stuff. So we were trying to join another pack, or, you know, you can kind of like make whatever you want. So if anybody's got any of these that read to you, or if you have your own idea for something cool, or if there's something you definitely do not want to play, that's a good one to bring up, because, you know, if you don't have a strong opinion on what we do play, but maybe you really don't want to do superheroes or whatever, then yeah, it's a discussion, so feel free.
Are there any of these that you would like to see in play, sort of like a play test? Like, oh, we need to see this one?
I would say at this point, I'm not too worried about it. We've played a couple of different scenarios, both, you know, with different kinds of tone and styles. So I'm actually okay with whatever you guys are interested in.
Fantastic.
So what kind of setting do we want to have? More like fantasy or science fiction-y, or something like post-apocalyptic? Because this Assassin Fighting Club, I don't know why that jumps out at me, but that seems kind of weirdly maybe fantasy or maybe contemporary or whatever that is. And I don't even know if the Assassin Fighting Club is a fighting club of assassins for assassins, or a club fighting assassins.
Yes, these are good questions. It might jump out at you because there's lots of capital letters.
It probably does, yeah.
I mean, I'm totally open to exploring what that is and playing that scenario, because I don't think I've played it yet.
I'm fine with any of these. Tony, Leandro, what do you think?
Yeah, it seems like we're in agreement. I'm fine with the AFC.
Yeah, same. I wouldn't have said no to most things, but definitely not going to say no to an assassin fighting club and figure out why we want to join them.
I guess the question is, do we want to set any kind of like, any more of a framework around what that is? Like, what kind of world or time frame, you know, like, is this some fantasy thing, or is it like cyber future or modern or whatever?
I kind of like the idea of a near future to future, sort of. Maybe even farther future, depending on how far people want to go.
Some kind of space opera stuff like that.
It could be.
Yeah.
I'm down for that. Yeah. Do we want to have a shared understanding of what the Assassin Fighting Club is, or do we want to play to find out what that is?
I'd like to play to find out.
Okay.
Unless somebody has strong preferences.
So when we talk about, you know, far future, one of the things that just sticks in my head is Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And we're dealing with, you know, bounty hunters kinds of things. I'd like to get on the table, are we talking about Star Wars or are we not? Because I'd like to flush that if I could, if that's not what we're doing. I
mean, I know Sabine said space opera, so it kind of like yeah, to me, it evokes some Star Wars-y type stuff. Are you asking if we're playing in the Star Wars universe, or if we're playing in a pseudo Star Wars type of future, like where we're talking about like space travel and all that stuff? Yes, I'm asking both. Or are we playing in a cyberpunk future or a traveler future or something like that? Right.
Personally, I'm really down with the Star Wars thing, but that's maybe because I'm just binging Clone Wars. So
I'd be fine with a space opera, but I might incorporate a lot of like cyberpunk elements, like maybe a lot more tech stuff, a lot more like cybernetic enhancements.
Oh, cool.
Maybe Luke has 2 cyborg arms, kind of deal.
Nice.
And we're not, I just want to make sure we're agreed, we're not necessarily in the Star Wars universe, it sounds like, but we're playing in a world where we've got different alien races. We're not too worried about hard sci-fi. It's kind of like just weirdo galactic sci-fi, that kind of thing, right? Okay, cool. Then I think we've set on that card. So then it comes back to Leandro.
What's the feel of our story? Is it serious, middle of the road, which is a hybrid of serious and funny, or silly, which is farcical, whimsical, ridiculous? Use a pencil and choose one of the following and leave this at the center of the table for reference. I don't have a pencil, I don't have a pen though.
Just make sure to mark your monitor really hard until you can see it. What do you guys think? I'm definitely, like, me personally, I don't want something super silly. Like, even though we're talking about Star Wars and we can already hear us kind of like, you know, giggle a bit about it, but like, I would definitely prefer something that's a little more, like, at least middle of the road. Like, you can have some dark elements and things like that. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
I
I
agree
don't know
with
if I
that.
want to have a silly assassin fighting club. I don't want to be too
Yeah.
silly. Like, it could be dark humor, sure, but yeah, I would want it to be like Monty Python, not that ridiculous.
I kind of almost want to say serious because I feel like with the setting that almost it's hard to tell whether it's a satire or not, in a sense, to me. Because if it's a space opera and you take it super seriously, it almost feels kind of like to me, a satire. You know what I mean? You got like fighting ninjas that are flying across space, like fighting each other, but everyone's super serious.
Anybody else?
I like this satirical thing. I imagine sort of into the Badlands optics because they take each other super serious, but it is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay. So I think it sounds kind of like if I'm interpreting it correctly, like, although I think our characters will take everything kind of seriously, you know, like there's this veneer that maybe, you know, as the audience members would look at it as like, well, you know, like it's not that serious, right? So it kind of feels like some middle of the road type thing, like depending on if we're talking about us or the characters, but we're open for it to be a little bit dark, right? Okay. Oops.
That's me, right?
Yes. Let me make sure. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
What motivates us? If the group wants, you can discuss the following. As the outsiders, why do we want to join the established community? As the established community, what's our motivation to accept new members?
And it says if the group wants only because sometimes this is obvious, you know, like why either one or the other of these questions might be obvious, but in some cases it's not. So like, yeah, let's look at the first one. Now, if we do want to go with something that's a little more of a serious tone, I think we might need to understand a little bit more of what the Assassin Fighting Club is. At least it might not make sense if, it might not help us be serious if some of us are coming in to fight assassins and some of us are there to be assassins. Like, you know, that sounds a little more like going on the silly side, right?
With this sort of, I mean, we keep coming back to the space opera tone. I feel like this Assassin Fighting Club is sort of maybe like a recruiting force for some kind of insurrectionary element in the galaxy.
Ooh.
That's what I'm feeling. This may be kind of, what were you going to say?
Oh, I said that sounds like it's got good scope, but yeah.
I just feel like there's kind of like maybe some dystopia elements going on and people who want to join are dissatisfied and they're looking for this Assassin Fighting Club to sort of help in redistributing some justice in the galaxy.
for variable definitions of justice.
Yeah.
I like that.
And
What do you guys think?
I might offer a dissenting view because I've
Yeah.
played lots of games where we were fighting for justice, and that's kind of, yeah, let's fight for justice. I mean, I like fighting for justice, but still, maybe these guys are maybe, yeah, social justice and stuff like that, but they're also out for themselves, for their assassins fighting club. Like, if you're in, it's good, and then we can fight for whatever we want. But if you're not in, then, well, they're not so cuddly.
I kind of like that that flip. Maybe we should go all the way. What if instead of being for the insurrectionary force, this is a fighting club for the ruling class,
Oh.
and you are assassins that hunt out the insurrectionary people. And so you take out rebel groups that might be
Terrorists.
Yeah, terrorists. Yeah, and we make sure that everything is stable. We don't want bad people in the galaxy.
And we want to join them because it pays good, or for various reasons?
It pays good. It's patriotic. It's your duty.
Okay.
What do you guys think? You other quiet folks.
Let me summarize to make sure I follow.
Yeah.
The idea is that there is a overarching government that we are joining an assassins club that protects the government from rebels or terrorists, depending on your point of view.
How about we
right?
protect the government from assassins? We call the bad guys assassins.
Yeah.
Oh,
We
yeah.
are the assassin fighting club,
Mhm.
right? So that's our word for terrorists, is assassins,
Yeah.
right?
Sounds good.
And we don't call ourselves assassins. I mean, that's exactly what we are. But like, we are the assassin fighting club, right?
But we're the good ones.
Yes.
And when
we
you're the good one,
probably have a name for ourselves, which sounds better.
we're not in that community yet, so we maybe
That's
don't
true.
even know. We
That's
may
true.
even not know the secret handshake.
I love it. Yeah. And I think that's a good framework. Like, we know what this group is, you know, how it markets itself and what its, you know, stated goals are as far as within our culture, like from what we understand, but because it's not necessarily a public, you know, a publicly known or, you know, group, right? We don't know all the ins and outs, right? There's like a lot of secretive stuff that we're not aware of. Okay. So as outsiders, why do we want to join the group? Have we answered that question? It sounds like partly the pay might be good. We're kind of on the right side of history as far as, you know, the current ruling government, right? We're able to protect stability. So we might have some moral reasons. We might have some
We might have some
amoral
issues with some of the assassins.
Correct. We might have personal stakes. And so, and we might, you know, like as we come into the game, all of us will have our own personal reasons for things that we do. But in general, it sounds like that's the reasons why people join.
Yep.
Okay. As the established community, what's our motivation to accept new members? So why does the AFC, you know, accept new members? Why do they need to? Or why are they interviewing us anyways?
Could it be that there's a high turnover, a high death rate, and they need
Yeah.
new people to
I thought the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm. So
It's
kind
attrition.
of
Can we say that there's a very specific event that happened recently which caused a lot of attrition?
Oh, nice.
And we don't have to define it like here, like a name for it. We can figure that out and play. But like, there's a somewhat obvious, like, you know, in the news, like some big thing happened, right? So like that may be.
Yeah, I feel like maybe like a whole planet left the government or something like that, which is really weird because it hasn't been a free planet for like who knows how long.
Ooh, yeah, that's good. That's some like high stakes fucking space shit. This could be the start of the dissolution of our stable empire, if I may use that word so boldly. All right, does that sound good? Any questions about that one? Cool, then I think we've done that card, and who did the last one? That was Sabine, right?
Yeah, so that means it's me, right?
Or
Okay.
Stephen.
Okay.
What is the voting expectation? The council will vote to accept one outsider, reject one outsider, accept all or no outsiders.
So depending on the scenario, sometimes one or the other makes sense. And some of this is just based on our choice of what we want to see in the game. Like when we were a pack of wolves, we decided, you know, either this new pack is going to accept us as a whole or not, but we're not going to leave each other. So we will be together. So it was all or none. In this case, like if this was very like, oh, you know, The Bachelor or whatever, you're accepting one, right? And that would be the goal. But in this case, if we are talking about like we just lost a bunch of people, maybe they're trying to get a bunch of new hires. So rejecting one might be good. But yeah, like what do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree with your last point.
Yeah, I think it would either be accept all or maybe just reject one.
What do you think, Sabine, Leandro?
Yeah, I think probably reject one if they're trying to rebuild their ranks, for sure. So they can't afford to be, well, they can't afford to be too picky, but you know, there's always going to be like the one.
So this is like a inverse bachelorette, that in that one guy gets kicked out and the rest gets accepted.
That's right.
Okay, cool. Let's do that. I will be rejected.
All right, let's see. Let's see how it goes. And that way there's a little bit of stakes, right? Like we all know that, you know, we're kind of trying to get in, like there's that chance we might not. All right. I'll read this one then. Place the X card at the center of the table. If at any point you feel uncomfortable with what is being said or done, please tap the X card and we will remove that content. Of course, because we're playing online, you can say it out loud, you can write it in the chat, you can make a symbol, all that kind of stuff. And of course, if somebody sees that somebody's done something like that in the chat, but the current active player doesn't notice it, feel free to speak up for anybody. The X card can also be used to simply get rid of a card for any reason. If a card is removed this way on your turn, simply draw another card. For more information, yada, yada, yada. If we were playing on a table, of course, this would be a card in the center of the table. Tony.
Place the I decline to answer card at the center of the table. Use the I decline to answer card whenever you, as the player or as your outside character, prefer not to answer the question.
And this is a little bit different from the X card. The X card removes the question from play. It was never asked, right? We're kind of like rolling back. This one is if you want to keep the whatever question in play, but you want to not answer it, right? So this could be, for example, a clarifying question. If I was asking a question of Sabine, you know, separate from the question cards, and, you know, her character wants to let that question stand, but doesn't want to answer it, right? Then like plead the fifth is like a US thing, right? Anyways, any question about that?
Me. Short or long game? Shuffle the question cards. Insert the I motion for a vote card into the middle of the question card stack. For a longer game, place it near the bottom. Then place the questions cards face down in the center of the table.
I have already done that in Virtual Planet. And then Sabine, you can read what this I motion for a vote card looks like.
I motion for a vote. When someone plays this card, the question and answer phase is immediately over. Move on to the voting cards. If you get this card, you don't have to play it.
So as you're going to
Okay.
see, we have a couple of cards in our hand on a turn. So when you do
Okay.
get this
Yeah.
card, you don't have to use it. You can still ask questions and you just keep passing this to the next player. So in a sense, we're going to control the pace once this comes up.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
All right, Stephen?
The council talks amongst themselves prior to questioning the outsiders.
Why do we need Moo members? We have a great thing going here. We all know the wrong outsiders can bring the morale down. It already took us so much to get this far.
Muted, Tony.
I was muted, sorry. But some of us were outsiders once. Then we became part of this community. Now look at us. We've helped make it great. It's our turn to give someone else a chance.
Remember what happened before? Why risk bringing new outsiders in? I mean, there's no way to be sure they're going to get in line with how we do things.
No, let's keep an open mind and heart. There's no harm in listening to what they have to say. I mean, maybe they can help us with our current problems. We could really use some innovation.
Can we trust them? They seem so different from us. Maybe we're too willing to give these outsiders the benefit of the doubt.
Well, we could use them to do things we don't want to do. Our resources are running low. Perhaps they know something we don't.
It's true that we have no clue if they're going to fit in or not, but I'm hearing that some of them have potential. Should we take the chance and find out?
Yes, let's meet these outsiders. It's time.
Okay, let's meet these outsiders.
Should I read this? Okay.
Sure, do it.
Each player grab a name tent. Write your outsider name, write their pronoun. If you want to add a few other details, feel free. When everyone's done, continue reading the cards.
So, because we're doing this in virtual land, the way we'll do our name tents is, I think you should be able to change your name. You might be able to like either right click on your picture, there might be some little 3 dots, and then there's like a rename function, or like, I don't know, it might be different. But what I recommend is when you rename yourself, use something like character name and then pronoun and any details and then player name, something like that. And because Zoom is not the coolest thing in the world, sorry, Zoom, like I think the names sometimes will get cut off a little bit in different views. So you might not want to have like a super long name. As far as those other details, like that's also going to depend on our scenario, right? Like in some cases, all you need is a name. But like if you want to say something about what kind of alien you are, or you know, you're a laser sword samurai or whatever, you know, feel free to add that. That's what I'm going to be. So let's see. Man, I miss those old days of like Google Hangouts, and then you had like all the apps and APIs, and it's like the golden age. And now we're in the dark ages. There was a fascinating video I saw today where it shows like the last 23 years or so of the top 10 internet sites based on, you know, the number of like people viewing, and it just shows it like as a timeline. Like it just sits there and spins the time from like 1996 all the way to now, and it'll just show you over the months like who the top 10 is and how it changes and how many views they got. And it's fascinating. And it makes you remember the good old days and the bad old days.
So what was the top in the beginning? What was the top?
In the beginning, AOL was like way up at the top there. And then Yahoo is there. Google doesn't even come up onto the timeline until like 2003.
Wow.
Top 10. And I think it's, you can see when they put out the Chrome browser. Because I remember when they put out Chrome originally, like before it was official, it was just like a beta release or whatever. Like I remember that was the first, I grabbed it. And like I have not stopped using it since because I just really liked it compared to the other ones. That was like 2005, 6 maybe. And you can see the shift. All of a sudden, like they just start, you know. Yeah, but Yahoo was up there forever. They were the site to beat. Let me know when you are all done. I'm ready.
Do we put the names in the chat as well? So
Yeah, so go ahead and put your name in the chat, and then what I'll do is I'll use that to rebuild our turn order. It's going to be the same. We're going to go in the same order that we were, but I'll put our character name, and in parentheses, I'll have our player name as well. So we can see, it's easier for us to refer to everyone. Yeah, it might be easier for some of you. I don't know. I know for me as the host, when I'm sharing my screen, it won't show me your names here at the bottom of the windows, which is really annoying. But as soon as I don't share my screen, like all you have your names there. So yeah, type in your name stuff in the chat. I think I can see most of it. I love yours. Unassuming human-like alien. That's great. And I think when we, the first time any of us is on scene, we should definitely describe a little bit of what we look like. Okay, and I think I have it almost done. Who am I missing? Stephen, did you put yours there? Can I see yours? Here, hold on. Oh, there.
Oh,
Okay.
mine is privately. Oh,
Yeah.
I see what I did. Sorry
Yeah, I
about
think
that.
you sent it just to me.
Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't even realize.
I've
I'm-
noticed that Zoom is really interesting too, because like normally you have to go down to the 2 and change it. But sometimes, like I've noticed, if I get a private message from somebody, it'll automatically switch it so that it assumes I'm going to want to send a private message back, or like it'll shift it sometimes without me doing it, and it's bizarre.
Well, in this case, I haven't used the chat, so it just
Right.
defaulted that way. That's weird.
It is weird. Okay, I think I have it down here now. So let me confirm with y'all. There. So if you look in the chat real quick. Oh, wait. Oops. I made a mistake. Let me redo that last part. I'm going to put Leandro first. I accidentally put, and then Sabine, then Stephen, then me, and Tony. There we go. So that last one that we see there, just to make it clear, I'm going to do that again. So that should be our turn order, which has our players and our character names there. Okay. I think it's Stephen's turn.
We will now take turns being the active player. Read the active player reference card and then place it at the center of the table.
The active player reference card just says this. We won't have it in front of us, but it's really simple. You will always have 3 question cards in your hand. You're going to select a question card and ask it to an outsider. Whenever possible, choose a different outsider than the last one that answered. Any player can then ask any clarifying questions. And then after questions have been answered, you pass the remaining cards in your hand to the next active player. I'm going to manage that process via private messages. So I'm going to send whoever the active player is now, like 3 lines, and they're going to look something like this. Here, I'll choose one that I know probably won't come up because I think it's at the end of the deck, but it might. But like, so here is what a question will look like. It'll have a number, Q, and then a number, and then it'll have a question. And so you're going to get 3 of those. And then you can just let me know which question you're asking or start asking it, and I'll figure it out. And then I'll put that question up on our shared board so we can all see it. Yeah, who wants to be the first player? Do we have any volunteers?
I'll go. I'll be
All right.
a council member.
Okay. So I have sent you 3 questions. Now, remember, when you do have these 3 cards in your hand, if you look at all 3 of them and you're like, none of them really are ones I want to ask, just tell me which one is the least interesting, and you can exit immediately, and then I'll send you a new one, right? So we can just X questions if we want to get rid of them. But just because you don't like a question, you don't have to exit. I mean, it will be passed to other people, so they may, but it's up to you.
No, I think I like what I've got so far. I'd like to ask the first one. So I just pick any outsider?
Correct.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I will ask 17 this question.
Wait, what the heck happened? There we go.
So 17, if you join us, what will you be sad to leave behind?
Ooh. Sorry, excuse me. I think, well, I think the main thing I'll be sad to leave behind is probably my extended family, because the thing is, how me and my kind live is we live in a space that's far wider and far larger than any galaxy could be. That's right, a server farm. Um, and when, not just any server farm, but one of the best virtual server farms out there in known space. And yes, I may be one of like very few, at least in terms of percentage, from our server farm to exit out into the quote unquote meat world. But that doesn't mean I'm not gonna miss that sort of communal experience. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's nice to be able to hold a pen instead of have to process the idea of holding a pen. But that doesn't mean that having to leave behind those other like bits of thought that I was once a part of is going to be hard. It's not an experience that can be replicated out here in the real world. Well, not that it's the real world. It's just a physical world, you know.
Ooh, while we're at it, do you want to give us a little bit of what we see when we're looking at you?
Yeah. So 17 described them as a reverse cyborg, which is exactly what it says in the tin. You know how like most cyborgs are like organic, then get synthetic parts. Then 17 is synthetic, who's getting organic parts. Um, it's kind of like a trend with their specific blend of kind of synthetic species. So what we see with 17 is like I think it's a very stylish space suit, which is just a suit with some neon on it. It's like a formal dining suit. It's like shimmery sort of silver. I think their skin, it looks robotic. It's still like just looks. It looks like what you think a robotic skin would look like. It's kind of like some sort of dull sort of silver, but really she could have gotten like nice silver, but instead went for the dull finish just to look a bit more run down, more common people esque. Um, um, her head is kind of like I think it's like that classic silent film Metropolis. The head the it's a female face, but like it looks like an Art Deco 1920s modernist futurist sort of design, like angles and whatnot. And again, it's also silver. Unlike most other reverse cyborgs who kind of go for obvious stuff like having organic eyes or hair, instead she went for something a bit more subtle. She has her synthetic body being powered by a organic heart. Sorry if that was a lot to suddenly drop on people.
No, I think this is great because like we're playing in such a strange setting. Like I think like I would love to hear this from everyone personally.
Does anyone have any follow-up questions to all that?
How long have you been in existence? Using standard time, of course.
Oh God, standard time is basically no time. Like a second of standard time is like a billion thoughts. If you had asked to calculate it over, how we calculate it, the numbers will be beyond your comprehension. But if I have to dumb it down, it's like 5 years, just about 5 years, which is again minuscule. But apparently to most people out here, it's a decent enough chunk of time.
5 years. Thank you for dumbing it down for me.
Oh yeah, I forgot we were talking to the council members here. I forgot that entire conceit. I'm quite tired.
So you have experience with meat people.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess if you want to know what kind of experience, I'd be happy to elaborate.
I don't know. What was the No, that's really another question for another time. Now, I just wanted to know if you have experience with meat people.
Have you ever kissed a person?
Yes.
And person
Yes, I
here,
have.
of course, means like any kind of entity, right?
Yes, I've kissed out here in Peak World, and not just because I paid them, you know. I've had relations, if you don't mind me saying, with other folks out here. They were an experience.
Yeah, we're not here for the kissing part. Have you ever killed a person?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, of course. Like I wouldn't sign up for this if I don't have experience in that. Yes, I've kissed and I've killed. If you want to look, I've sent in my CV and my resume and whatnot. I've done what needs to be done. And
What I don't see here is whether or not you've killed someone that you've kissed.
that is a no. I would say no. I don't think I've done that before. But that wouldn't mean that I'm not inclined or that I would be against it. I know what this organization does, and sometimes I assume that killing would sometimes be preceded by kissing.
No further questions from me.
No, I'm good.
All right.
And usually I'll wait until it sounds like we're done, but even if it sounds kind of like we might be done, I may forward the questions to the next player. So just be aware, you may see that in the chat pop up. But if people are still asking questions, feel free to wait on that until it's all done.
Right. So I want to ask this of Levi Bao, or is it Levi Bao? I need to be sure. What do you personally gain by joining our community?
So I have a question. I'm actually seeing the shared question. Is that correct?
I don't know. I only sent it privately to, oh, wait, which one? You're seeing when those messages come through?
So I saw the screen flicker through a bunch of questions. And then I
Oh,
saw,
yeah.
what
If
do you personally gain by joining our community?
Yeah. That was just me running like Leandro said Q33 like in the chat. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go find it by hitting the button.
Okay.
Got
I
it.
wasn't sure how that behind the scenes was.
No. I thought you meant you saw like the private chats going on. That's what I was asking. All right, cool. That should be fine.
So it's Levi, and Levi says, there is much to gain from your community. I've seen the great wealth within your community, and I think that I can contribute to that wealth by gathering it from our enemies. Levi is very short, robed, dark cowl, and from his reputation, from their reputation, has sticky fingers and takes a lot of things from their victims, favors a poison or a silence, not blaster or anything like that, not out and out violence, but something very sneaky and subtle.
Are these literally sticky fingers? Like the sticky stuff on the fingers?
They are now. Yeah.
Cool.
All right. We've heard what you can give to us, but what do you get from joining up with us? Like you personally, there must be some sort of benefit that you'll be getting?
Of course. Whenever, I'm an independent operator, I'm in small stakes, and the scores aren't nearly as big. Whenever I am working for a group as large and as important as yours, I am legitimate, and the stakes are much bigger, and I'm doing it for the right reasons.
So I assume you mean money when you say the stakes are much bigger. What will you do with the money you get?
I enjoy a certain level of largesse. There is a certain amount of lifestyle that I prefer, and the money will help with that. Money is also power. It's what makes the world move. And it means that I don't have to worry as much about, I can hire guards. I don't have to worry as much about some of my compatriots taking advantage of the situation.
It shows here your galactic credit score is relatively low. Are you going to be paying off some of your debts prior to this largesse that you're talking about?
The credit score, as you know, is largely built up upon a biased situation. It's not really something that you should pay much attention to. For example, they count gambling debts against your, credit score, which just doesn't make any sense. Instead, I would suggest that you should pay attention to, the fact that this is the amount of material wealth that I have at the moment, which is quite generous, and what that would be given once I am a part of the group, how that would be taken from our enemies.
Interesting point. I think unbeknownst to everyone, like this is the person who actually wrote how galactic credit scores work, right?
Should we be worried that there may come a point when maybe another organization or another fabulously wealthy individual would be simply able to buy you away from us?
Well, don't you have enough money to make sure that doesn't happen?
Well,
I mean, right now, you're the biggest fish in the pond. And are you saying that you plan on becoming a smaller fish? I assume not, because otherwise your organization isn't something I would necessarily want to be a part of. I think that I'm here to be a part of the biggest organization and the best organization.
What happened to these ideals and doing the right thing you mentioned at the beginning?
Well, doing the right thing is a part of making sure that the distribution of wealth flows in the correct direction. I believe we are the correct direction, and I believe that those who oppose us do not deserve the wealth that they have.
I have forwarded questions on to the next player.
They're in the common chat now.
I don't see them.
No, I sent it directly to you, I think. Do you see it, Sabine?
Yeah, I see it. Oh, I'm supposed to ask that. Sorry.
Yeah.
Cool. No, yeah. Okay.
We're talking high tech here.
Oh, wow.
Deck of cards.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in theory, I guess this could have been done in Roll20, but that sounds like it would have taken some amount of work and effort.
Yeah.
setting up for the Queen game, the center for the Queen game, roll 20 is so much work.
Okay.
It's pretty though.
It's nice, yeah, but
I
effort.
think I'm going with Q35. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't have said that out, right? No.
That's fine.
And I have to say who I ask it off.
Correct.
Cool. I think I want to ask Drere? Yeah.
Yeah,
How did
Drere.
you? Drere. Okay.
Sorry, did Judy ask me the question? I think it might have cut out.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Should I read it out loud? How did you recently keep your group safe?
How did I originally keep my group safe? All right.
Recently,
recently.
sorry.
That's right. I have it here to look at too. Okay. So I think that before the council, we see this. It's a bipedal figure, but it's completely covered in this metal exoskeleton. And it's a being that comes from the planet Roran. I think that was a planet that was maybe some decades ago colonized by the Galactic government. And the beings living there are incapable of existing in the atmosphere that most species seem to live in. So the government had to give them these exoskeleton shells for them to exist inside of. And then that's kind of how anyone's ever seen them. It's kind of like a lot of myths and urban legends about how they're supposed to look and things like that, because you really only see them in their shells. And they all have like government branding on them. So Drere has like the Galactic government branding on their little outfit. And so they respond to this question: how did you recently keep your group safe? So yeah, Drere speaks up, and their voice comes through sort of like this voice modulation system that comes out of the shell. And Drere says, well, recently there was a unfortunate element of Roran society that did not respect the gifts given by the government. And they decided to abandon their shells on our home planet. And so myself, working with other like-minded individuals, made sure that these individuals were cast out and sent to a region of our home planet that is very inhospitable to all life. And we made sure that our communities were kept safe from these sort of unsavory elements.
How is it that you decided, or how was it decided that, this was the course of action to take? Were you part of that decision, or were you just an enforcer?
I think Drere nods and says yes. And on our home planet, all those who cannot exist within the community are sent to this land. It is an ancient tradition. All those who decide are also those who enforce. And so, as someone who decreed, I was responsible for taking them to this land.
Who was the closest person to you that you had to take to that land?
Yeah, and I think Drere is pausing for a moment, and they look up and they speak and they say, I had to take my own sibling.
There's like the little drawing on a
notepad.
Yeah.
Just for clarification, how many siblings do you have?
I think Drere responds and says, 42.
that same person like crosses stuff out, writes some other notes.
And what happens to people who escape from this area?
Drere shakes her head. No one escapes.
No one has tried?
All have tried. None have escaped.
Questions have been sent to Stephen. By the way, I'm loving all the aliens so far. This is awesome.
I'm going to ask question 34 of Vialin. This is, how did you find out about us?
Vialin is, as I said, as I wrote down, an unassuming, not humanoid person. Their skin changes color slightly. Sometimes it's more gray or more green or more beige, I guess. It's mostly an inoffensive color. They are middling tall, middling heavy. There's nothing really that stands totally out. They don't have hair, but they are wearing some sort of a hat. And as they get asked the question, they look up. They have sort of yellowish eyes with no pupils or anything. They're just yellowish and slightly glowy. And answer, well, it is in certain, when you move in certain circles, word gets around. People talk. Many people talk, and they do not always watch who's listening.
How would you keep us safe from those who talk too much?
I would probably, I think I would impose some strict punishments to those who talk too much, because you can use all the technology you want. If people can't keep their mouths shut, and if they don't know there are consequences, they will talk. People love talking. Even I do.
In these circles you traversed in, what did you hear about us that made you think you're a good fit?
I heard that you liked, instead of going in with great big ships and shooting up lots and lots of little people, you like to go in surgically. Take out the ones who make trouble, leave the rest perturbed, but unharmed, mostly. I like that. I don't like big, messy explosions.
Can you tell us about a surgical procedure that you might have performed recently?
Oh. Well, as I've said, I like to talk, but you will understand that I can only go into the broad strokes. There was a man who had several lovely, lovely spouses, and they all kind of were of the understanding that this man was their only spouse. And when they found out, they asked me if I could maybe arrange a very unfortunate thing happening to him that was both humiliating and painful and final. And these are 3 things I apologize.
Council member takes out a little Kleenex and kind of like rubs it. I think this question is for 17. Let's see here. I think there's actually a couple of questions that are being asked. Maybe even give us a little bit of a very like a similar feel to like that thing we saw in the recent Blade Runner, you know, where it's like, you know, some of those kind of like nonsensical kind of, you know, gauging your mental facilities type questions.
Like, probably got asked, like, what's the color of a mirror? You know?
Yes, I love it.
Those sort of logic gate questions.
What's your answer to what's the color of a mirror?
Ooh, what? No, I have to actually have to think about this. How do you logically answer that? Whatever it's pointed at.
I think there's that long hesitation, and then you're finally like, whatever it's pointed at. And then the question comes out where it seems like there's a part of you that doesn't want to join our community. What makes you hesitate?
If I have to be honest, it doesn't seem like your group have many people like me. As in, people who are made rather than gestated in the natural chaos of nature. I know folks like me haven't been around and recognized for a while, which makes sense. It's weird to deliberately create life, but given what you do and how you go about doing things, I would have thought it would stand to reason that you'd want to have people like me who increasingly are, you know, becoming a decent part of the wider galactic community.
I think you get interrupted and it's like, I think you misunderstood the question. The question was not, why would we not want you to join us? But why does it seem that a part of you does not want to join our community? Please be honest. There's like a couple of probes that come down and they're obviously like sensing the environment.
Well, it ties back to what I said at the start. There's a part of me that would miss being in this state, in this world, in this server. You've never had people like me. I know this. I've seen this. I've looked this up. You've never had what I'll try not to describe the inner workings of what I am, but I know for a fact that nothing like me has ever been part of your halls. It's daunting to be the first.
But you said that you were out of your server thingy for 5 years now. And that a second is a billion thoughts for you. So you've been away for a while now.
I'm not the only one who's been away. There's been a lot of me who do these things, who tourist about in meat space. So I've never been truly alone until coming here, really.
That gets confusing now.
Sorry, my life is a couple billion algorithms slammed into one. It's a bit hard to translate.
The little like truth meter goes ding, like you're telling the truth.
Tell us a little bit about a time whenever you hesitated or your thoughts caused a problem for you during your job.
the way I do things, most of the time, all I need to do is sit next to a terminal and just connect to it. And then things would happen, elevators just stop working, alarms just don't go, alarms maybe do go when they shouldn't. And nobody notices because I'm nowhere near where things happen. It's simple, elegant, it's quick. There's a time or two though when sometimes you connect to a place that's much closer to home than expected, and suddenly you're like, hey, let's catch up. And again, we could spend billions upon billions of what we'd call time catching up, and then come back and find maybe you've spent a bit too much time. So that has happened. I'm not ashamed to admit that.
Oh, so I just sent questions to Tony. It's your turn. However, we have been, we're at the 1 hour, 20-minute mark. Do we want to take like a short bio break or something like that? What do you guys think? So let's do we need just like 5 minutes, or do we want to do like 10 minutes?
Yeah,
5 minutes
is good.
All right, so let's do, it's 20 minutes after the hour here. So in like 25 after the hour, we'll reconvene. Okay.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I had forgotten that I had questions. So I'm going to ask a question of I'm going to ask question 19. And I'm going to ask it of our gambling friend, Bao. So the question is, why did your tone change just now?
So please remind me of the last question that was asked before we took a break.
It was, it seemed like there was a part of you that doesn't want to join our community that was asked of
That's right.
17.
17.
Leandro.
Okay.
You're muted, Steve.
Thank you. Thank you. My tone changed because I see danger coming from some of the choices being made here. I'd like to see more from. So I have a question out of character. Are we a group?
Sometimes it depends a little bit on our situation, right? I think in this case, I'll tell you my impressions and we can kind of roundtable it real quick. My impression is we're all possibly separately here to interview for this thing, but because we run in these circles as kind of like possible bounty hunters or other things, contractors, like it is possible that we've run into each other or worked with each other. That's kind of my impression, but like, I don't know if there's a specific answer. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it feels like that for me too. I don't think we're a group of happy bounty hunters trying to convince the council to take all of us on. That is not the tone I read here. But it's totally possible that we all might have run across each other.
Yeah, I completely agree. Drere would be Just as happy if none of you made it. So
That's certainly the impression I got. So before I went that direction, I wanted to ask everyone. Okay, great. I'm sensing some danger here. I'm seeing weaknesses, such as the shell of Drere. He can't even go about in normal society, and 17 seems to have weaknesses from they're missing their home world, and I'm concerned that they may end up. What would happen if they had to kill someone from their own place? I just, my tone changed because my danger senses went up.
yeah, I think that
So-
council member also taking notes, and then just as you bring up each, potential joiner, they are kind of like looking them over and then making some more notes with your comments.
Given that you're so astute with your diagnostics of your fellow applicants, would you care to put that diagnostic to yourself?
Well, I think we've already
Really,
talked.
every one of you have to.
Yeah, yes. I think we've already talked about this somewhat, in that my weakness is power and money. So if there was a challenge to this, then there would be more of a concern. I also stated why I don't think that's as big of a concern for this organization, because you're the biggest and the best. You have the power, but that would be my weakness.
This council member turns to probably the one of the queen, says, "Kid's quite a flatterer, isn't he? Aren't they?"
Now, it is true that very frequently members of this organization may be sent on missions that are solo missions. But you also will sometimes have to go and work with others. What are your thoughts on how well you work with others?
Depending on that our styles mesh. I'll give you an example of a specific case where I worked well with others. For example, there was a very aggressive, violent assassin that I worked with for a while. And I was very good at weakening their prey before they entered and letting them know what the best attack vector was, where to hide, and where to hit them whenever it was quiet. I feel very certain that my partner would be long dead if it were not for me, because they would have attacked them in public or would have attacked them where their guards were nearby. So partnership is good as long as our styles match.
All right. I think I'm going to ask, Q31 to Tarsus, who we've not seen yet. So let's get him out here, just so Bao can criticize them. Yeah. How did you meet your group?
So this is the first time we're seeing Tarsus. Tarsus is a relatively, human-sized as far as like height. He's actually much longer than a human, but because he's like a long, like worm-like creature, like almost like a third or more of his body is like on the ground like a tail, and then the rest of it is kind of like pushed up by a couple of limbs, like almost like legs or something, or arms, to allow him to elevate and, like, you know, stand at like human height, right? He's all like, yeah, he's basically a worm with a couple of like little limbs, and we can see two little like hands that he's got. This his species is relatively new to the you know, to this like galactic organization, right? So like as species go, it's definitely not one of the ones that's been around for a while, you know. Not exactly like a caterpillar, only because it doesn't have like a lot of legs. It's just like a long, thick worm, but he's got like just enough limbs to be able to hold himself off the ground, right? But those two like legs, you know, he'll use those as well as his worm body to kind of propel him forward, right? Well, it's kind of happenstance. I happen to be in a place not far from here, and I you know, I happen to send out a call, and it just so happens that these individuals who were on their way to meet you, you know, uh, uh, picked me up. Good luck, wouldn't you say?
Does happenstance have much to do with it? How your life works?
Well, you could say that. Yes. I mean, it's served me well thus far. It's gotten me into many places that maybe I wouldn't have gotten into otherwise. Wouldn't you say?
Sure. Care to give us an example?
Well, sure. I was over on planet L502 not a few weeks ago, standard time, and you know, just there on an excursion, if you will, a minor job that I had to do. And while I was there, you know, it just so happened I happened to be in a restaurant, and I was eavesdropping, which happens occasionally. Okay, let's be frank, it happens all the time. And I just so happened to see that there was a diplomat there that needed a bit of assistance, and I was able to be at the right place at the right time with the right set of tools, and was able to get rid of a particularly thorny obstruction in this diplomat's side. And I think you know which diplomat I'm talking about. You know,
Yes.
Ajo the Third, ruler of that planet. I
The
believe
bald
he
one, right?
sent a very pleasant thank you note to the Emperor based on that. But you know, happenstance.
I'm not gonna need a minute to get over this character.
And okay, so you happen to come to stroll in here and say, hey, and will you happen to stroll out, or will you stay
Oh, well,
if we take you?
Well, if you take me, of course I will stay. I mean, if it's you know, a set of jobs and a position that suits me, then yes, why wouldn't I?
It
And
might
I think,
happen that you happen to be somewhere else and happen to find something else to do for somebody who happens by who has other aims than we do.
oh, these are very valid concerns. However, I'm sure an organization such as yourself, you know, you would probably best be suited to take advantage of the skills that I have. Wouldn't you say?
Possibly.
Is that a threat?
Is what a threat? Do you feel threatened?
No, I was asking if you were threatening if we do not choose you.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think I was being threatening. What was threatening about me?
Oh. And I think that this counselor writes some notes. Tell us about a time when your luck ran out.
I see. Only feeling a little bit threatened. I understand. And then he like just moves on and well, you know, maybe 2 months ago, I was in a position where I ran into an alien who had a reverse set of skills. You know how that is. When all of a sudden you run up against somebody who poses a problem. And it doesn't happen often, but I know we've all been in that position. So I'm afraid I have to admit I was a little bit quick to action. I normally am not. And yeah, I had to put him down. But, you know, it was, I think, to everyone's best resolution. But if nothing else, it was an example of when I was quick to action. This is a little snap from his tiny little weird fingers. Wouldn't you say?
Out of character, I'm so upset right now. Like, I'm so upset.
Who's next? Let me just line that up.
So the question is, what is the most useless fact you know? And I'm so torn.
You want to ask it of everyone, huh?
Yeah, I want to ask it of everyone, yes. But I think I'll ask it of, yeah, I asked Drere the last time, I'll ask somebody else. We've just heard from Tarsus that these Levi are 17. I think 17 knows so many useless facts because she's a cyborg. So I'll ask it of Levi. What is the most useless fact you know?
That's Levi. And as it turns out, in my line of work, it seems useless. I know a lot about clothing and a lot about the material used to make such clothing. For example, I know how to get in and out of pockets without anyone knowing. I know what clothing can be pierced by a needle. I know what clothing cannot, what is hard and what is sharp. And it's useful to me, but it's useless to almost everyone else.
Doesn't seem very useless in our job of in our line of work.
Not for us. Yes. But for most people, knowing about what clothing is the softest and what will repel, a small metallic object, it's not that useful.
And you know nothing that's more useless than that. Wow, I'm impressed. I make a note.
What would you consider a useless fact then? If we can get all philosophical about this.
What would I consider a useless fact? Something that cost a great deal, but was not, did not have any use later. I'll give an example. I once spent a great deal of time breaking into a records facility to look for a mark and see what I could find out about their habits. I thought they were a desperate gambler, and I could use that to my advantage. As it turned out, the Mark was not a useless gambler or was addicted to gambling. They were just very, very bad with their money. I thought, this money can't just be going away, but no, it turns out they just had poorly invested it and were giving it away. That wasn't useful at all.
I think there's one of the council members is currently like examining maybe the time frame and that mark, and is like looking at your bank account during that time. And is like, so that's the most useless fact that you can think of. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I think there's been a council member who's just this whole time kind of been staring at their own clothes and is kind of worried. And he speaks out and he says, which of the council members here do you think is wearing adequate clothing?
Ah, that's a very good question. I think what you're asking is basically, what do I think of your security here? I think that for a group like us, I would expect for 17 to be well prepared, knowing about what the situation was that we were going into. I would expect that you should be threatened by me if you don't see me, because I would be hiding off in a shadow someplace. Or you wouldn't see what I dropped into your food or your water. But I'm here and I'm present, so I don't think that's necessarily a threat. As far as specifically your clothing and your armor, if you were worried, I would suggest that you hire bodyguards so that they can adjust your clothing so that it is better armored. I noticed that you specifically seemed concerned about your clothing, so you hadn't put much thought into it. And I think that with some nice plating in the fabric, it wouldn't be much heavier, but it would repel any attacks that you might be concerned about.
Yeah, I think we see one of those surveillance drones kind of zoom in a little bit closer, and then over the shoulder of that council member we see on the little data pad is like a live feed of Levi, just kind of like watching them right in front.
Let's ask this question of 17. 17, what are you most scared of?
Have you ever heard of cyber rot?
Why don't you describe that to us?
Okay. Imagine you had a thought. And the thing with thoughts is that they don't come out of nowhere. They usually spring off another thought. And then that thought will make another thought bloom. And then that thought will make another bloom, go on, and so forth. That's how thinking works. Imagine if a thought just stopped. If it just stopped blooming, stopped being, or just ended. To translate it in meat space terms, imagine if the very idea of this assassin's organization just ended. just cut off, gone. There's no chance of there ever being another one because it's just done. There's a dead end. Like all of its history, all of the things you can do, all the things that might happen just ends, you know?
Is this a threat?
No, I wouldn't be so gauche. No. God, no. I'm being
How does-
honest.
This is how I feel if I get out of the shower without having coffee, really.
I guess you can translate to that whatever feeling you think you're feeling after I describe that.
How does one get cyber rot? Is this a virus you're talking of?
Oh, and can bio beings get it too?
See, that's a funny thing. When it happens out here in meat space in the real world, everything kind of adjusts so that people kind of just sweep away when things just end, because things have to move on. You can't stop. You can't just, things can't just end like that. No, society, a meat space society has a way of just making sure things keep going. So what could be a threat could easily be a weapon as well.
Is that why you left your people?
I'm saying it's a thing that I believe your group could benefit to know more about.
Is this something you will hope to be able to do something about if you join our organization or take advantage of? How do we relate to this?
Well, one, what makes you think I haven't already taken advantage of it? Two, not many outside of my kind knows how the principles of how it works. So some of you would be the first to know.
Now that sounds like a threat.
I'm going to ask this one of Drere. One of the council members looks at you and kind of has this puzzled look, probably the whole time that you've been up there, even through prior questions. What do you eat? Do you even cook?
Yeah, and I think G responds, all Roran are fed through their shell. The government in their magnificence has processed many of the natural food sources of our planet, and they provide them to us as needed. And the shells that we have also been provided have a intake slot so that we may eat. So
Is that a pleasant experience?
this is all experiences that lead to further life are pleasant, truly. And we are, as a species, very grateful for all the help that the government has provided for us. That now we needn't even worry whether we can eat or not. We are always living.
This particular council member is like, while you're answering this question, is unwrapping a very noisy like candy bar and is like crunching on it and making lots of sounds.
Mm-hmm. And I think like that active eating is kind of disgusting, Drere. Like from their body posture, kind of like, yeah.
It sounds like you have a lot of, you owe a lot to your government. If you were to join this organization, where would your loyalties lie?
Well, I think out of character, I've been implying that the government that Drere subscribes to is this council's government, like the Galactic Empire kind of.
I see. Okay.
So because their planet was colonized by this, maybe not this council, but a council probably like it.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the question is, can you cook? I mean, might be necessary for some things to be prepared. Damn it.
So Drere says, I can cook for others of that might be in my group, but of course I would always bring my own ration packs to be fed into my shell.
Oh, that's a good policy.
Especially around that Bao character.
Yes, I worry if I might check my logs and have all my ration packs at the end of the day. I think there's going to be some quid pro quo here, and I'm going to ask Tarsus a question. And it'll be question 5. And yeah, so this is council member who's just kind of staring at Tarsus, and he's just kind of like, he's weirded out. Like he obviously does not like this being who's just recently joined kind of like the planet's federations. And he just says, what do you carry with you wherever you go? Please describe it. How do you carry anything?
And I think part of the question comes from the fact that I think Tarsus, for all intents and purposes in this interview, looks completely naked, right? Like it's just a worm. Like there is no belts or gear. I mean, I think that like he was wearing something earlier, you know, like in the ship or something, but you know, is not carrying any kind of thing. And I think we see one of his little arms kind of like slurp, kind of like almost like all the water gets sucked out of it and it becomes kind of dehydrated for a second. And then and it kind of like goes into the body and then it comes back out and it's holding like a little pile of glistening eggs, right? And yeah, I think he goes like, well, you know, of course, I do carry my children everywhere I go. That is non-negotiable. Unlike some of you who maybe, you know, it only takes you a few months or weeks or even years to breed. Like we are a slower species. We've been around for a very, very long time. And as you know, some of those advanced species have become weak in that they take a long time to gestate. And he slowly like slurps them back in as he's talking. But he's like, yeah, it takes us a good 10 years to give birth. And you know, it's not simple. I'm only stage 3 in this. You know, these eggs have gone from one to another.
So that means you will have time off for parroting eventually, right? If I understand this correctly.
Oh, well, I'm only stage 3. Stage 8 deals with the children. I don't have to deal with the children. I mean, we have like 7 genders. I'm not the one responsible for the children.
Okay. Fair.
But obviously you know this, being experts at all the galactic species. I don't need to teach you. Wouldn't you say?
I wouldn't have asked if I knew this.
Every time he does that weird "what do you say" thing, like whoever's interviewing feels like they're being interviewed just slightly. Like the way he responds to your like defensive posture, like he looks like he's interviewing you, right?
Given what we do here in this organization of ours, would keeping your children so close to you be a concern? Like, would you ever foresee a scenario where they could be used against you and maybe against us?
Oh, that's a very astute question. I suppose. Do you feel that your life is important to you? Do you feel like someone can use your life against you? My children are not separate from me, so anything that can be used to harm them would also harm me. So I do not believe I am in any different situation than anybody else in this crew. I am not separate from my children until I pass them on to the next one, the next stage, and then it's their responsibility. Wouldn't you say?
I think the councilman nods and turns to the one next to him, the one cleaning, says, "Assertive little fucker, this one, isn't he?"
You mentioned that your people are long-lived, of course. Does this make you more reluctant to take chances with your own life if it were necessary?
Yes, apparently you've studied our kind quite a bit. And, he's kind of like, makes this weird sound that sounds like slurping, which I guess is their laughter or something. Our kind takes a long time to give birth, but we don't necessarily live that much longer than any of you. I myself am only 20 years old. A spry youth, right? And yet I'm middle-aged. So you don't have to fear about that. Or do you? I kind of like the idea that when he says, "or do you," like you're very tempted to answer the question. There's probably like a moment where it's like, wait, I don't need to answer that question. I'm not on an interview here, right?
All right. I'm gonna ask our innocuous human there, Vialin, to describe your perfect day.
My perfect day. I believe my perfect day would be spent in artistic endeavor. Waking up, eating something unusual, doing a spot of work in a poetical fashion, and then to the opera, of course. That would be perfect.
So when you say artistic endeavor, would you care to elaborate on what kind of artistic endeavor you endeavor into being or doing?
Well, there are different things I enjoy. Personally, I fancy myself quite the musician. An amateur, of course, a mere layman. But I've studied, and I play the harp. I've been told it is not bad. Also, harp strings can be used for so many interesting purposes.
How often do you think you need a perfect day in your life?
I think I would like one to have one once. I have not had one. But it might be something for retirement.
You know, in our line of work, retirement means something completely different.
Well, yes, of course. I apologize for my unclear vocabulary.
Well, it may not have been unclear. You may have been saving that for the afterlife.
And it's a totally fake laugh.
Sounds to us, though, that you already have an idea of what your perfect day is like. Why haven't you simply had one?
Because always there's a little tiny detail not quite right. The coffee is half a degree too hot. The salad is not crispy enough. There is a minute pause before the opera starts. And of course, sometimes when people die, it can get so messy. They can get so messy. But I soldier through. That is life.
Councilman turns to again, the one the Queen exists. Oh, it's a picky one, this one, huh?
Yes, I am picky. That's true. That's why I'm trying to join you and not one of the smaller families.
I think one of the council members is like, starts asking a question, which is, you know, have you ever, how many performances of any type have you attended or have you watched? And then they kind of struggle with the word. So instead of watched, it becomes like attended, or have you seen, or have you been a part of?
Well, I am afraid I'm not entirely sure if you are asking me how many operas or artistic endeavors I have witnessed, or how many things I have performed, how many things that would be more on the purview of this organization.
Yes. How many performances have you partaken of?
Oh, I will ensure you that my experience is sufficient for this. There are many, I have not counted them, and even if I had, I am not quite ready to give details about my previous engagements. You understand that discretion is part of what I do.
Yeah.
I think what's the most beautiful or remarkable thing you see about our community? Well, I think I would like to ask 17.
Geez, 17 gets all the questions. What I really think is just absolute top notch, just like absolute, just, you know, belt to belt, just the most beautiful thing about your about this group, about this group of assassins. It's just your beautiful, bold attempt.
We're not the assassins. We're not the assassins. The assassins are the bad guys. Just to make that clear.
Well, I do. Well, as I was saying before, I was so rudely interrupted. What I do find most beautiful about your community is just your bold attempt to impose some semblance of order into this wild and wacky natural world. I mean, when you think about it, this galactic empire expands so much. It spans so much. You look at it by square foot, by parsec. It's so much to contain. And there's you who try to ensure this expansion goes certain ways. Ensure that these weeds have to be plucked. Trying to figure out which weeds have to be plucked, which points you have to control. It's breathtaking, honestly. Some would call it folly. Some would. Just want to emphasize that. Some would. Maybe these so-called assassins. But just looking at it, just the attempt alone, it's it's admirable.
How would you change the way we attempt to take care of our garden?
Well, I wouldn't say I'd change it. I'd be simply adding a new perspective, just a new way of making sure order remained. After all, isn't that how your group has stuck around for so long? If you don't change, you don't bring in something different, then you might as well just stop, right? I'd change how you do it by simply being here.
One of the council members leans forward and addresses Drere. How are you different from the rest of your group? And what is it about that that makes it better?
Yeah, and I think Drere speaks up and says, well, you know, through the Roran history, there's many who are not appreciative of the gifts and industrialization that have happened to our planet after being visited. But I am not one of those. I truly respect the progress our society has taken and accelerated even after all these years of being infused with new technology. And I think that perspective is very valuable in our community, to make sure that we know the reason we have so much and the reason we can have so much more is because of this new contact with the Galactic government. And to most importantly remember that we have a place involved there, and we must do our best to assist them after all that they've helped us.
Is there more of your kind who think the way you do as well?
Yeah, there's definitely more, and I think that element is growing in our society as we push forward our message, and it's more clearly understood, and as the severity of any infractions to the otherwise is enforced.
What is it about this that makes your difference better than the rest of your group?
I think, well, Drere speaks up even more excitedly now, and they say, well, it's because I'm here. No one has gone as far from the home planet as I have, and I plan to be an ambassador for all of us.
I see. Write something down.
So you do not have much experience with, let's say, the Empire's other species, like that worm guy. You seen any of these before?
No, that's quite different, but really, most everyone in the Empire is quite different from us, so it is no concern.
How is no concern if you don't even know what things eat or what they breathe or how they interact?
I know that the Galactic government will provide and ensure that each of those beings can interact and eat and communicate with one another, and it's not something for me to question.
In response to that, I think one of the council members turns to Levi. Is that it?
V. Yes.
Yes, and mispronounces the name, of course, as has been happening every single time, and says, you know, we have questioned some of you about, you know, what you would bring to the table or what you can see being improved here. But really what I'm interested in is, from your perspective, what do you think our greatest weakness is? And what would you be able to do to fix such a thing?
Well, I have to admit, I'm very pleased to be asked about, from my advice to be sought after by this council, yet again, about how to strengthen the group as a whole. I would say that one of your greatest weaknesses probably has to do with the as Drere put it, there are some people in the who are in the government, you know, of worlds that don't agree with the opinions and the leadership that has been taken, and they have been ostracized or surgically cut out, as Vialin put it. I think that this is a PR issue. I think suppressing this information and keeping it from coming out into the open is something that would limit that would benefit the council itself. In other words, making sure that there aren't too many dissenters that might foster more people to dissent. And like I said, I'm very good at hiding things and making things go away. And that's what I would bring to the organization.
How do you feel that we're not already doing that? Because we're not stormtroopers or anything. We don't storm in usually, you know that.
Oh, right. I'm not talking about direct action. I'm talking about public opinion. For example, Drere, who's relatively new to this line of work, has participated in taking his brethren to an area of their homeworld that is inhospitable. I think that this should be kept more quiet and be less public. Those people should simply disappear.
Have you ever considered a position in management?
I think that often management is driven from below. As long as there are capable employees, then I think that management's job is often to listen to the expertise from those employees and to then act upon them, just like you're doing right now, asking me about what our greatness weakness is. Right now, I feel like my expertise is more in the monetary and secretive capabilities. I do not have the abilities that some of my peers have.
If you were to augment your abilities by adding one, what ability would you add?
Ooh. It's very good. Let's look at my peers for a moment and talk about their abilities. I think my favorite ability that we have discussed so far is this ability that 17 has to consider many options very, very quickly. And I think that that would vastly increase my abilities.
So knowing the odds, if you will.
Yes. And being able to make decisions much more quickly. Most of my work has to be pre-planned.
And I think a council member steps forward and raises a question for Vialin. And the question is, who raised you?
I was raised by the glorious government of the empire. As you probably know, my people, or probably not, my people are unassuming. Farmers, or the equivalent of farmers. There was this unfortunate incident, however, with our farming goods being distributed where the empire would it not. And then there was the bombing, and a few children were taken into care, and I was one of them. And then the empire, in their gracious glory, raised us all in orphanages.
Yeah, I think we see Drere nodding along very approvingly.
Again, this council member leans over to Queen and says, "Bit of a kiss ass, this one."
What would you say is the lesson you best learn in the orphanage that others who did not have that pleasure would not have learned?
The lesson that I best learned, I think, was, and this is pertinent here, was to be unobtrusive, not to make much of myself, to stay in the corners, to observe, and to act when the time was right. And there's this secret hidden smile that is kind of chilling.
Are there any lessons that the Emperor, that you've learned not to do from the Empire?
Well, yes, not to annoy the Empire like my people did. I have taken that lesson very, very deeply to heart.
What do you miss most about your people?
I've never met my people.
You've never heard stories? You've never seen anything of your people?
I have not endeavored to learn much about them. They are unimportant. They are gone. They were obliterated. How much can they matter?
Good. That's good to hear.
Also, they wrote no operas.
I think this council member, who is kind of like just Don Corleone, turns to Tarsus and says, "Given you live life in such a happenstance manner, I'd appreciate to know who would you consider to be the leader of your group."
Very good question. Very good question. I mean, of course, you probably want to hear that, you know, I have analyzed and I understand all of my colleagues' strengths and weaknesses. You probably are expecting to hear that I will laud myself as a leader amongst them. I'll tell you what I think you want to hear. I think you want to hear that that our good friend here, Levi, is probably one that you could use to lead quite a few. I believe that they have the skills that it takes to charismatically run a subset of the organization. You know, probably a strong subset. They have a lot of skills with many different personalities and creatures. I think they would rub some the wrong way, but that's not necessarily a negative. Sometimes you need a little bit of that tension within a small society framework. And I think I go on to talk about like some of the others and how maybe they wouldn't lead quite as strongly, you know.
Hey, can I interrupt you, Tarsus, for a moment here?
Of course.
Who do you consider to be the best person? You, not what you want us to hear. Who is the one who you would most likely follow?
I suppose you have to listen to my answer and make a judgment call. Who here seems to know the most about?
Oh, so you think it's yourself. Okay, I got it.
Well, I mean, if you say so. Leandro.
Who among your the rest of your group would you consider to be a strong enough leader that you would follow them without thought, and why?
That is a very good question. It would have to be me. Anyone else, I would need to put a lot of thought into it.
I understand. That's a good answer.
I think breaking Leandro always has to be the goal of the game.
One other question in that way. Who of these guys would you most like to work with?
Ooh. I dare say that's a good one. I'll have to be honest. Drere. Only because I am so unfamiliar with their particular species. You know, I've worked with a number of others here and there of various kinds. And I take a lot of pleasure in working with different citizens of our galactic empire, because how else can you learn how to work well together? And does this little thing with his little hands, you know, without understanding and knowing as much as you can about all of the peoples in your glorious empire. Drere intrigues me, yes.
I have a question. And that question would be, who do you trust the least in your group? And I think, I want to hear it from Drere.
I think Drere pauses for a moment. They're kind of looking around, eyeing the different people who are here. And I think their gaze finally kind of rests on Levi. And they're just kind of stuck staring at them. He says, well, I think there are members here among us who do not value how much support they receive from the civilization empire that we live in now. And still they seek to gain more than they deserve. That is not a value that we consider worth having on Rorin. And then he steps back. They keep their head down low.
One of the council members turns to the others and says, "Thank you for that honest answer. I motion for a vote."
Dun, dun, dun. Awesome. All right. So when one of the players motions for a vote, then we move on to our voting cards. And so this is the end frame of the game. And just to give everyone an idea, like we're in the last 10 minutes of play, right? And because you motioned for a vote, go ahead and read our card.
Fellow council members, we've heard enough from these outsiders. It's now time for us to deliberate.
So the deliberation phase is where each of us, as council members, has 1 minute to talk. We can champion or malign any of these outsiders. We can mention merits, flaws, other details, etc. And we can go in any order, so we don't have to go strictly in the same order that we were going before. So whenever anyone's ready, you can go ahead and do it. Now, the way I'm going to do it here online is I'll use a little timer thing on my phone, but I'll be like muted in the background. So what'll happen is when 1 minute is up, I'm just going to raise my finger like this to show you that 1 minute has just passed since you started, but I'm not going to interrupt you, so you can feel free to like tie it up in a way that you feel kind of works. Also, because it's 1 minute, it goes very fast. And so let's just have a reminder, we're going to be rejecting one outsider. So instead of going through all of them, which you can try to do, but like you might find you run out of time, you might want to concentrate on either the ones that you want voted in or the one you want voted out. But it's your time to do what you will. So whenever anyone's ready, feel free to go, and I'll just time in the background.
I feel so ready to go. Okay, I'm starting now. Okay, now these guys, I don't trust this Levi guy, and Drere seems kind of too military for us. The other 17 is interesting. I like that Tarsus guy. He talks about bullshit. That's nice, and Vialin probably will murder all of us in our sleep if he likes the musical score for that. But that's that fits into our purview, I guess.
Next. All right, so the way I see it, that 17 is a touch arrogant, but they're weird and unique. They could get us into weird places. The Vialin guy, it's also really weird, but they have easy wants. We could control that. Same with that Drere fellow, devoted, very malleable, easy enough to use. Levi is smart, and we just need to treat them smartly. As far as I'm concerned, it's that asshole worm who needs to go. Can't trust him. He's a prick, that one.
Well, I think this is a terrible crop of recruits this year. I just don't know that any of them will really satisfy our needs. The one that strikes out to me as being the biggest issue is probably that Drere, because he seems very inexperienced and naive in the ways of the world. I'm afraid that the others could all fit into our organization fairly well, but Drere, I think, might be a little bit too idealistic.
Yeah, and I think we see the same councilman that was kind of worried about his clothes. And he starts off by saying, I really think that we need to have someone like Levi in our group, someone who knows how to talk to people, someone who knows the way the world works, about money, about what people are really after, about power. I don't think that we should have people like Tarsus and Drere here. They just really don't fit into, what the Galactic government is really focused on. And I think they would really put off a lot of the other recruits. So I don't think that's something that we really want to have here in the AFC, so to speak. But everyone else, I think they might be able to find a place. Even 17, with enough exposure.
And I think we see another council member, and they're saying, no, I mean, look, I understand your concerns with both Drere and, but look at Drere. I think they would add something that our council currently lacks, which is a little bit of devotion. Sometimes you need a little bit of that to offset all of our selfish wants and desires. And, he's definitely like chiding a couple of specific individuals. To that end, I think Levi is a good addition. I think it, they would balance some of Drere's stoicism. I would love to see their arguments, and some of the others look like they would do okay. Vialin, I'm a little bit worried about what I don't know. And wait a minute, who's Tarsus? And then, so we've all given our deliberation. So now we're going to vote. So the question is, do we vote anonymously or openly? Now, either way, we're going to vote simultaneously. So let me tell you how this would work. Openly just means that we get to see who voted for what at the end of the day, right? But either way, we won't see the votes until like they all come out at the same time. What do you guys think? Should we do anonymously where we don't know who voted for what, or openly?
I wouldn't mind doing it openly.
Is this like an out of character thing, or is this like a council thing?
I mean, this is the council, but we as, like, when I say openly, I just mean we'll know which player voted for which character, right? And keep in mind, you're not allowed to vote for yourself. It'll be the rule on the next page.
Wow. I would suggest that, if anyone would be offended, I don't think I would. So I don't think I would be offended if every one of you voted for me, voted for Levi. If anyone feels like they might, then let's vote anonymously. But otherwise, I'm fine with it being open.
What do you guys think?
I'm fine with open.
Yeah.
We're voting the one we're rejecting, right?
Correct.
So you can't vote to reject yourself.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. That's too easy. And really, the reason why it says you cannot vote for yourself is I think when you accept one, the idea is you can't vote for your own character. You have to vote for some other character. Like in theory, I don't know that it would necessarily be a problem to vote for yourself for, especially like rejecting one, but let's just keep that rule. So you cannot vote for yourself. The way we're going to vote is we're going to type in the character name that we're voting for, and we have that list pretty recently in the chat. Do not hit enter though until we're all ready. So what I'm going to do is you're going to type it in. I'm going to ask if everyone's ready, and once I get everyone's okay that they're ready to vote, then I'm going to do a 3, 2, 1 count, and that's when we'll all hit enter and we can see all the results at the same time. So make sure to set your to thing so it's set to everyone, just so it's not a private message in case like we were sending things. And then take a second to think and vote. Looks like you guys are all ready. I need a second. And again, because we're rejecting one, this is the one person you are rejecting.
Right now I'm having second thoughts.
Yeah, all right, I think I'm ready.
Yeah, me as well.
Okay, Leandro, did you need another second or you're good? Okay, so I'll do a 3, 2, 1, and then we'll hit enter and see in the chat. So 3, 2, 1, vote. All right. Awesome. So Tarsus wins and is rejected from the council. So the game is almost over. However, we do have one more thing, which is what becomes of us. So it has been some time since the council made their decision. This could be minutes, hours, or weeks, or years. What happens or has happened to our outsiders? Each of us briefly gets to share their fate. And again, we can do this in any order. So if anybody's ready, feel free to go ahead.
So I think we see Levi at the, many years many years have passed, and you can't tell that he's aged or anything. It's just a cloak, right? But he's sitting behind a desk and he's running numbers, and he goes out and there's this whole room of people, and he kind of shouts at them a little bit, get the numbers up and do this thing, and comes back and starts doing it. And I think in the background you see his bank account going up and up and up.
Oh, I have something for Vialin. This is maybe a bit later. It's hard to say with Vialin because you can't really guess their age. They're sitting on a balcony. It's a mild night. You can hear the sound of an opera. Vialin sits there. They have a glass of something particularly nice looking in their hand. You can see that in the seat next to them. There's a shadowed figure, a bigger figure, and they are looking out, and then the music stops and they drink the last sip from their glass and set it down. And they say, you know what, councilman, you're right. It needs to have, the perfect day needs to have an afterlife. Just turns out it's not mine. And then you can see the councilman who said that thing about the afterlife, and he's quite dead in the next seat.
Oh, man.
Very good.
Yeah, I think we see this is sort of like a commotion, lots of people moving, and it's some sort of like a studio or like a newsroom, or something's about to happen with some sort of broadcast. And then we get the picture and the idea that there is a Roran species member who's going to appear on the media without their shell. And it's like a big event. And they're kind of like an activist spokesperson for that species and that planet. And then I think we see this whoever this being is getting ready, and they're kind of like in what would be like a makeup room. And they're like a collection of these worms that kind of mold together, and they kind of are attempting to form sort of like a humanoid look, but they kind of just keep falling and moving into different forms. So it's kind of an amorphous blob. And then we see Drere step into the room, and the door shuts behind them. And then I think we simply hear Drere say, "You're so ungrateful. I'm sorry it had to end like this." And that's where it cuts.
Very cool.
I think over time, 17 gives the quote unquote AFC some new tricks up their trade. Suddenly, anything connected to the net is now accessible to the AFC. Anything electronic can now be under their control. And I think over time, 17, who's increasingly looking more human, suddenly I think they're like, for like a month, they've given themselves human skin just to see what it feels like. Every now and then, increasingly, 17 has lobbied to add more people like her to this group. So suddenly there's like a bunch more of these reverse cyborgs joining the group. Now, the tricky part is there are some people in the council or in the group who are kind of curious / worried on whether these were all just more members of 17's people, or are they just more members of 17?
Love it. I think with Tarsus, we're looking at like a screen, and it shows like manifest and the members that were there during this meeting, and we can see that Tarsus's name is scrubbed, right? It's getting erased, and we see that it's Tarsus himself, which is at that terminal, and he kind of like gives off a bunch of water, like, because worms are kind of hydrostatic, and he kind of like dehydrates and like gets himself into this little like hidden panel that's underneath the computer system, and pulls out a little communicator, and he just sends us a message saying like, all right, we're ready for the next phase. And yeah, I think during that meeting, like, we see the council and they're like, yeah, this is the first time we've ever voted to have everybody accepted, and like the list of names is just you four, right?
Very cool.
That's it. That's our game.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah, I want to play this now.
That's a very cool play. That's a very cool game.
So I want to be sensitive to all of your time. So of course, if anybody needs to leave, feel free. If anybody does want to stick around and chat for a few minutes, I'm totally cool to do that. And again, for anyone listening in recorded land, I'll put, I'll mention and send you guys the link to where the game is currently like at least being mentioned. But again, for before I wrap this part up and then we move into like debrief mode or whatever. So the game itself is called The Outsiders, at least for now. And if you have played For the Queen, again, one of the things you may have noticed in recent months is there is a For the Queen like SRD, where you can make your own like Descended from the Queen games, which use kind of like, it's almost like PBTA or Forged in the Dark or whatever. And so if you go to forthequeen.com, there's a wording on licensing, but there's also a games link, and it lists a bunch of games that are Descended from the Queen games that people have decided to post information about there. And I will highlight another one called Reunion, which is a game that my friend, you recognize Yoshi Krielman from the Gauntlet community, as well as Andy Munich and Jen Martin, all kind of wrote together. And Reunion is also a fantastic game where it's about a bunch of us coming together after some period of time and kind of hashing things out that happened in the past and that have happened now. So also kind of like, it's a For the Queen game, but the mechanics are slightly different than the original game. And this one was inspired by my partner Jay when she was watching The Walking Dead. And there's a scene where like a bunch of people are trying to get into their community, and like this little council is kind of like questioning them and deciding whether to let them in. She was like, I really want to play that game, you know? And so this kind of like came out of that. But anyways, that's enough of the plug. And then, so yeah, if anyone's interested, go ahead.
Is Outsiders on the link?
It should be, yeah, it should be at the very bottom. So if you go to forthequeengame.com, or forthequeengame.com/games, you know, if you click on like the games link, then it should be the one at the bottom there right now, at least. And I think if you click on learn more, it just goes to like a temporary site we have that talks about it. And it's influenced by a number of other games. I think if you talk to Jay, you know, she wouldn't say that, oh, this is just a Descender from the Queen game. Like, it's inspired by things like Everyone's a Suspect, which Corinne Irvine wrote, which is a fantastic game. Again, For the Queen and Reunion, The Quiet Year, things like that. So, but anyways, yeah, like, what do you guys think? Should we do like a Stars and Wishes thing, or?
I'm fine with that. I also wrote down some questions and statements and stuff like that I could talk through, but I don't want to. I want to give everyone a chance. Yeah.
Sure.
I will say I do have to go because I've not had dinner.
Yeah.
So I should do
Take
that,
care of that body.
Yeah, but I do just want to say.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Oh, you just got on mute.
You're muted.
All right. Yeah, I did just want to say that, like, yeah, I had a lot of fun with this game. These characters are so much. I think there's recorded proof that I had a lot of fun. Clearly, they're all. I did not expect for them to be so joyously reprehensible. Well, except for Drere. They're just a nice boy who probably shouldn't be here in this group. But yeah, I just want to say these characters are just so much. Anyways,
yeah, it was fantastic. And I really enjoyed having that conversation in the beginning of the game where we talked about tone and different stuff. I think that's such a useful aspect. I mean, I love that this game has it, and you can see it borrows a little bit from like even Good Society or some of those other games where you want to talk about tone ahead of time. And it really helped us figure out that, wait, we want to, you know, like, what angle are we approaching the game? Like, how serious do we want to be? How much silliness do we want? But also, like, the fact that we ended up being kind of like the dark side, like, really influenced kind of like how everything worked out. So thanks for having that conversation with me.
And it was great playing with you, Leandro. It was a blast.
Thanks very much. Great playing with you, folks. I'm going to go grab some dinner.
Take it easy.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Yeah, in the same vein, I would love to stay in RPG theory, but I've got to go get ready for my next Gauntlet game and do all those things. But it was an absolute pleasure. I'm very glad to play with you all and play again with you, Tamara. And again, just repeating the same thing. I love all these characters we came up with. Like, this is not at all what I expect the game to be, but that's for the best always. And it was definitely an excellent experience. So thank you all. Thank you for running it.
Awesome.
So Tony,
Thank you for
Tony, actually,
playing us.
one of the stars I had was for you, which was setting me up so well to call for the vote, because you were like, who do you not trust? And like, I don't trust Levi. Great, let's call for a vote. It felt perfect. So thank you so much for setting me up on that. That was
no
great.
Problem. Yeah, no problem at all. All right. Well, I
right,
hope
Tony.
to catch you all in some later games. So
Thank you
take
so
it
much.
easy.
All right. Cool. And Tony, so I'm kind of bummed because Tor was also supposed to be in the game. And Tony and Tor, I know from Big Bad Con, we played a couple of times there in Meat Space. And I knew Tor was part of the Gauntlet. I didn't know Tony was until just like a couple of weeks ago when we saw each other again at Big Bad. But yeah, do you guys want to just go like circle-wise? So why don't, like, Sabine, why don't you start, and then we'll just go back and forth until someone's ready to leave or done.
Yeah, okay.
Stuff.
Okay. Thoughts. First of all, I like the way the game gave us a sort of a character creation, even if it was just a name and a phrase. I like that one, because that was sometimes I had a problem with the Queen games. The characters had no names. I had nothing to hang their identities on. And when the groups were larger, like 5 people, I had to take notes on who said what and what they were, because the answers were so disparate. And if you got a question at the beginning where you had no idea about your character, and it was a very question like, how are you beautiful, or something like that, sometimes that was a bit jarring. So I like this better, with the fact that we already had a kind of brief idea about who these characters were. I like the setting creation and the discussion about tone and stuff like that. That made it a bit clearer what was expected of us, or what we could lean into. I personally would have liked it better if we had kept and now you get asked a question, and now you get asked a question, and the next person gets asked a question, instead of going, and now you can ask a question.
So meaning that, and let me make sure I understand that interpretation. Are you saying that, as, let's say it's your turn as the council person to ask a question, would you have wanted to be able to ask everybody the other character?
No.
What are you asking?
I would have. I don't know. And for the Queen, if I remember rightly, which I might not, you would draw a question and then you answer it, and then the next person draws a question, answers it. So this, in this way, was you draw a question and then ask it.
Right.
And I would like to have the person whose turn it is to be the one who answers it.
Oh, I see. I see what you're saying. So basically, we would go in order, but that order would determine who gets asked the question.
Yes, exactly.
Would that person, that's interesting, because I'm trying to figure out mechanically how that would work. Like, let's say it's my turn. Would I have the question cards that would ask myself the question, or would somebody else have that?
Maybe you could give the question cards to another player and say, hey, you asked me this question.
Would it potentially fix the issue if you had, let's say I get 3 question cards and you're the next person and I ask the question, but it's always to you and it's not to just anyone else at the table?
That would, yeah, because I had the feeling that if you had a very interesting character and everybody wants to ask questions about that interesting character, and the others who didn't get a strong start would get less questions asked.
So it's interesting.
Fewer questions asked, sorry.
By regimenting that a little bit, it means that the questions that you ask, well, it means a couple of things. It means, number one, the questions that you ask might not be tailored towards a specific character. So if you get one about, why are you so evil, and you talk to Drere, then maybe that might not be the right question for him. But it also means that you're always going to be asking the question of the same person. But
it sounds like one of the issues is spotlight management, right?
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
and there's different ways that that, I mean, like that's one suggestion on a way that it can be handled, but I agree there may be other problematic elements with it that the game probably wouldn't handle well. I mean, another option, of course, is like, for example, if you had, you know, if everyone had a token in front of them or some signifier to show how many questions they've been asked, like there'd be other ways that you can possibly play with spotlight management, but it is one of the problems with this version of the game, right? And Reunion is similar as well, where you're asking, on your turn, you're asking somebody a question. So like, you know, it would have the kind of the same issue where like it requires us as players, because mechanically it's not being enforced, it requires us to spotlight manage, right? And that could be an issue.
I felt like we did that well during our game.
I do, yeah.
One way you could enforce that mechanically is to place down your table tent.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, or
doesn't
otherwise
work digitally, but in
right.
person you could just put down your table tent.
Right.
Yeah, and digitally you can just change your name and then put an X in front of it. If you're not playing with StreamYard, at least.
Yeah. And mechanically, like virtually, it's always like, I don't know exactly how to make this work other than how I did it, right? Where one person is taking on the role of the card manager, right? Like in a sense, I got to see everyone's cards. It's not really an issue because like, who cares? But, you know, like in Roll20, of course, if you had a deck, now you have to like not just pull cards, but it's not just cards in your hand, you're passing them a lot. And that, like, I don't know how well Roll20 handles that. Like I know it does, I just don't, I think it's a little bit of overhead.
I think you could just have the active cards in the middle, and the one who is the active player picks them up and looks at them and chooses one and leaves the other two in the middle.
Right, so we would all just kind of see them or something like that, right? And
no, you don't have to
mean
see
face
all.
down?
They could be face down, and only the player who picks them up. I think that could work. I am not sure.
Yeah.
So to be honest, I felt like the way that you did this worked great. The only issue is that there's a large load on you.
Right.
Meaning you have to manage all of that card work.
Right. Which, and to admit, like, it's really not that hard. Like, you've got the list of questions that are already shuffled. I'm just like copying and pasting stuff to you guys. But it's a little bit of management, right? It's a little bit of work.
Actually, couldn't you just go and work with a table and like an Excel sheet and have people roll dice to get 3 questions from that table, or have randomizer into that Excel sheet?
The question is, you know, if you're passing, like, are you always getting 3 random ones, or are you passing them? One of the nice things about the passing ones is that one, you get this like hints of what questions are coming up, which is kind of like fun, but people can X questions out. So like you can't really control what other people will do with those cards. But also like the I motion for a vote, like that card was in play, I think about 3 hands before it was used. So like, again, that control of once it's in the hand, it's always there until someone uses it.
So I'm curious, I saw I motion for a vote on the hand that I got it and the hand previous.
Oh, then maybe it was even longer than that. Yeah.
Sabine, did you see that?
I have it. I had it. I got it, and I don't know if it was in the hand before or if I was the first person to get it. But
you only got it once?
I got it once.
Oh, then I was the first person to get it, and it made it all the way around the table. Because, like you said, it was really interesting because I kept waiting to see who was going to do it.
Yeah.
And I knew that whenever Sabine didn't ask it, I was like, oh, I know it's coming to me. And Tony set me up. So it was great for me to be able to say, oh, let's not talk about this very much. Let's just call for a vote. And yeah, that was great.
Yeah, I personally really like how that mechanic is kind of worked out, because there's this level of like, it signals that the game's coming to an end at any time, but it also kind of like elevates the tension a little bit, but it also gives you control as players. Like if you're still very interested in playing the game, you can just keep playing the game. Like it doesn't prevent you from, it's not the queen is under attack and now we're done, right? It's, you know, kind of lets us control when we want to finish.
Yeah, I like that. I also like the whole thing with the vote and the stuff. It felt more rounded, I think. Like the end of for the queen, it's usually The queen is under attack. You're the next person to answer, and that is your only chance to get closure for your character.
Right.
And that is part of the game that I really not a great fan of.
Right.
I would, so I don't know if I missed the text or something, but I would put in the text that you can't X-card I mentioned a motion for a vote.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's funny because like even in For the Queen, I've had that question come up, like, can you X card the queen is under attack?
Yeah.
I mean, in a sense you can, like the rules don't say you can't do it. Like, have you broken the game? Kind of, right? Like, I mean, you can just decide, hey, we don't want the queen to be under attack because like maybe you X card that facet of the game and you just want it to have a happy ending. You can do that too, right? But
Yeah.
like, it does break the game at that point, right? One other thing that I think is interesting is like, let's say we voted and it's a tie, which it doesn't happen as frequently with this many players, but if you had like a 3-player game or a 4-player game, it's very easy for you to do that, right? Then what happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like right now, we don't say in the rules, I think in the longer version of the rules, it would be like, if it's a tie, then determine that something has gone wrong and you can epilogue that however you want. Maybe that's, it depends on the scenario, right? Is that a revolt? Is that the council deciding we will accept no one, even though we said we would reject one? Is that us revolting and taking over the town, through secret, whatever, like that's up to us. Yeah.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. Just that the tie escalates everything.
Yeah.
I have to admit that whenever we were voting, I was kind of hoping I would be the one rejected because I was hoping from the very beginning that the rejected outsider got killed. The first job of the ones that were voted in was to kill the guy that they rejected.
Oh, I like that.
And they're like, ooh.
I like the idea that if Tarsus didn't have mind control powers, that he probably would have been killed.
Yeah, very
makes sense.
Nice.
So the game that we made actually made me. It brought a lot of the Valerian movie vibes with all the crazy aliens.
Yes.
And then it also brought a big vibe of Fiasco, where we're all horrible people. But I think that was just the, game that we were playing.
Right.
Yeah, I think that was the setting and not the game in itself. That we were so horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't. I was just an artist.
Yeah, but your art. Oh my God.
Well.
Cool. Yeah. Any other feedback or anything? Oh, and by the way, I will send a thing in via the DM and stuff. I know Jay's got like a Google form to fill out like after the fact. So if you do want to give any feedback that way, I know she'd appreciate it. But I'll ask for emails like via the Slack or something.
Cool.
Yeah. Anything else?
I had one other thing. Actually, I had a couple of other things. One is that our game felt a lot like a job interview. Yeah. Is that common?
Sometimes, yes. And like there was actually a good comment when we were talking about how to pitch the game where someone was like, like I thought coming into it that it'd be very like formal interview, and it didn't feel like that in the specific game that I was talking about. But they were like, but you might want to avoid using the word interview because like most people don't want to go into a game feeling like they're going to be interviewed, right? Or they're in a job interview.
Yeah. I recognized like about halfway through, it was like, it's been, over a decade since I've been on a job interview, and I'm getting tense, and I'm feeling that whole question and, what kind of questions do I need to ask in a job interview kind of thing. And I was like, it might be because of the choice that we made to accept all but one. I think if it had been a group thing, it would feel more collaborative.
Yeah.
But whenever it's, we're only going to take one, or we're going to reject all but one, we're going to reject one, that kind of leads it into feeling more like an interview.
I think for me, that felt less like a job interview but like a police procedural where the detectives ask questions of the suspects. It felt a bit like that because there were lots of people and they were asking this one fellow, and this one fellow wasn't maybe telling the whole truth, because I'm sure I wasn't.
Right. Do you think, Stephen, that like, is that something that, like, what do you think about that? Like, so now that you've recognized that and that's kind of how it made you feel, is that a good or bad thing? Is that something that should be advertised up front in any specific way? Like, what do you think?
So I don't think it should be advertised at all that, this is the interview role-playing game. I think that would be a detriment. And that was one of the notes that I made was, in my mind was, okay, I'm feeling interviewed. I need to kind of break away from that and focus in more on the parts of it that I'm having fun with. Let's explore characters and descriptions and that kind of stuff and not fall into that. And then I made a mental note, let's make sure I don't ever pitch this game as an interview. Yeah.
Right. I'm gonna, here, just in the chat, I'm gonna throw here, let me see. What you should see I just posted is basically the pitch. That's the high level pitch for the game, the written down version.
So I like that description. I have to admit, what hooked me into the game was your description of the potential genres.
Right.
And I would include that because this description, whenever I read it, it's like, what kind of community are you talking about? If you said a den of wolves, a magical school, a isolated planet rejoining a human alliance, that all of a sudden it's very evocative.
Right.
If
So
that were in the back of the book, that's what I do. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that next paragraph I just posted is kind of like the one I think, like it's roughly what I had in the pitch on Gauntlet Con, which adds that bit. I think the first part is just like, what is the game, right? Like, it's kind of like two elements, right? We're trying to get in, but we're also the people determining whether we get in. And then the second part is like that, like, okay, well, what are the choices? Like you said, what are the choices? I think that's also a good part of it. And so, I didn't, what do you think?
No, go ahead.
Oh, no, that was it. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so I'm not a game designer and I'm not a purchaser or developer or a company person. If it were me, the first thing I'd do is I'd try and put the hook in.
Right.
That would draw everybody in and make them keep reading. And I would put that hook in, what's it like to apply to a magical school, flee from an apocalypse, zombie world kind of thing, and then put in the description of this is what it's like to be a part of a community and to join up. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, I think I've got to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Take
don't
care
know
of
if I
yourself.
get to sleep now or I have another game in 2 hours and I've started, I don't know. And
Surely you don't.
sleep,
It's like 10 o'clock there, isn't it? 10 or 11?
It's 10:15. Yeah, that's a midnight game.
We're also talking Sabine here, so.
Yeah. Well, it's the part of a 3-parter, and it was later yesterday because we had a time change. That's
right.
Was it the die game?
Yes, it's the die game.
Oh, I'm so jealous. That sounds great.
Yeah, it's really something. And I'm really excited about it. And I don't think I can go to sleep now because now I'm excited and I can't sleep while I'm excited. And I probably won't fall asleep during the game because I never do. So, okay. Thank you for running.
We had fun. Thank you so much. It was great.
Bye, Sabine.
Tell Jay that this is an awesome game.
Oh,
and
will
I
do.
really loved it.
Awesome.
And Stephen, nice to play with you. Nice to see another Java incarnation. And see you all. And
bye, Sabine.
Bye.
Awesome.
The only other thing I had to say was I have to admit that often whenever I play with people, and I've only played with you a couple of times, I look at the books on their wall and all that kind of stuff. You have the game Untold.
Oh,
on your
yeah.
shelf. Um,
Uh-huh.
And I've had the most difficult time selling that to people. You know, hey, let's play this game. That would
It's
be
still
great.
in shrink wrap.
Is it?
Yes.
Do you know what it is?
Barely. I funded the Kickstarter, and I
Okay.
remember at the time, like dice and the
Yeah.
thing.
So I funded the Kickstarter because it
Yeah.
was a way for me to get the Rory Story Cubes that
Yeah.
didn't come into the U.S. And I was so
Okay.
excited. It is. Do you play many board games?
We play some, yeah.
It is a story game for board gamers.
Okay.
Okay, so it's literally, it walks you through, and there's like a little tarot card of what do you want this story to be about.
Yeah.
And you know, says fill out little lines and kind of talks you through setting up a setting.
Yeah.
But it has safety tools in it.
Oh, nice.
I mean, it's got a play card, a pause card, and maybe a fast forward card or something
Oh,
like
cool.
that.
So like
that you set out in the middle of the board.
script change style.
Yeah.
That's
And
nice.
then it's got basically, I've always struggled a little bit with Rory Story Cubes. I have friends who will like roll them and make up an adventure around them.
Right.
This is much more structured.
Okay.
And you set up, I think it's 3 or 4 boards on the main board. So it's inserts. And what they do is those boards are kind of like an outline of
Almost
of
like
a
a story
story.
framework or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
a good framework for this. And I was like, so if you don't have that innately built in, or
Yeah.
you rely on your television experience or something like that, it's like, oh, this says, oh, this is the setup. This is where, you know, you get in trouble. This is where you discover a mystery, and this is the climax, and this is the epilogue.
Right.
All that up for you.
Oh, that's really cool.
I really like it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I keep pushing it on my story game friends and my board game friends, saying, hey, we should play this because I think you'll have a really good time with it. But I haven't had much luck with it.
No, thanks for the that recommendation, because like it's one of those where I haven't wanted to get rid of it. Like there's some Kickstarters where like it'll come like 2 years later, like a board game or something, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm not into this anymore. I'm just gonna find another home for it. But it's kind of been sitting there because I wasn't sure, you know. But no, I'll check it out.
I would definitely try it out, especially
Yeah.
if you can find people who, so I don't know about you, but I try and push the gauntlet, and there are people who are reluctant. They're like, I have my story game or my LARP
Yeah.
group, and I do this.
Yeah.
If there's a group that you have where they're into board games a little bit, and they're might be dabbling in role-playing games, I
Yeah.
think that would be a good fit.
Okay, cool. I'll check it
Awesome.
out.
Well, it's great playing with you again.
Yeah, no, likewise. Yeah, and I'll see you around in the space.
Yeah, you take it easy.
All right, bye, Steven.